thank you for sticking with us. We're going straight into the impact. As I introduced before the break, it's a conversation all about educating the boy child. And I'm joined by Solomon Ayodele of the Boys Quarters Africa. Okay, just to go through this again. Good morning and welcome. Let's settle into this one because this is something that's close to my heart. So the organization kicked off operations in 2018 and has since then reached out to over 2,500 boys across different cities in Nigeria, different backgrounds and religious inclinations. So you've expanded and currently have a growing network of over 100 volunteers across 4 countries in Africa. So tell us a little bit about, what the essence, the DNA of Boys Quarters Africa is.
So, thank you. Boys Quarters basically started in 2018 because I discovered that Africa is a talking generation. We have a lot of issues, but we'll keep analyzing and analyzing. So we'll keep talking about the problem, never trying to work to provide a solution. And I believe there's a problem with masculinity in this part of the world. It's a global problem, but it's more endemic in Africa. So 2018, I just felt, there's a problem with masculinity. What can we do? There's a lot of attention on the girl child. They are raised deliberately how to talk, how to walk, how to cook, how to sit, how to address men, how to treat visitors. But there's an assumption about boys. There's this gender empathy where they feel, well, they'll be okay. And that is the problem. So we keep going through the same circles over and over again. We don't give the boys the same attention we give the girls, and these guys end up being the husbands of these girls. They become the Uber drivers, they become the cook, they become the violent guys. So it's for me it was a ripple effect. So I felt, let's do something that would help the boys transit deliberately. Things that would give them a platform to express themselves. There are a lot of assumptions about boys and things that would help them open up and let us dig deep into the problems we have with fatherhood and with masculinity generally. So that was how we basically kicked off.
Now, how much of this is cultural rewiring vis-a-vis education? Because one might argue that, we're coming from a cultural context that, that has a certain perspective towards masculinity and the role of a man in society. How much of your effort goes into sort of trying to rewire what culture genuinely says about masculinity? Because as much as a man has a certain position, that position is never, an aggressive one or a negative one. It speaks to the positivity of it.
Yes, so I'd say, one of the things we did as Boys Quarters is to break our strategy into 5 pillars of impact, to say leadership, empowerment, 4, leadership, empowerment, education, and advocacy. So the first point is we've realized that the lack of purpose, if you don't understand purpose, you would abuse power. So we've discovered that the power that has been wielded towards the man is being abused in this part of the world. So the first thing we try to do is to detoxify the minds of African boys about leadership. Leadership is not sex, it's not gender. So part of the campaigns we do, we go to a class of about 500 boys and we'll get a girl in there and we'll say, this girl is your leader. You will see their reaction immediately. They will be like, no, this girl cannot lead. So it's a bottom-top issue. So it's quite difficult at this point to start telling my father now to say that, you are not the lord of the house. To say that if my mom earns much more than him, that wouldn't be an issue. But of course, what we try to do is to take it a step at a time. It's a cultural thing. It's already in the part of our system. Parents unconsciously pass it through to their children, especially boys. So you make a boy feel like a superhuman. So there's this gender conditioning where boys feel like, I'm the Lord. I can overpower a girl. We've had a boy ask us that, what if I decide to, call a girl and she doesn't answer me and I force her? A 17-year-old boy, in a secondary school. So what we try to do is to take it a step at a time and, go through our leadership, our pillars of impact leadership, and also educate them to say that, we know some of those boys don't know these things. Even their parents don't know too. That girls and boys, they are equal. They should be treated alike. They should be given the same training. They should be raised deliberately too. So, this is what we do through our pillars of impact.
I'm so glad we're having this conversation today because earlier in the show we were looking at the results of primary education, primary exams, that were held in Kenya. And, there was this consistency that females did better in languages and gentlemen did better in maths and sciences, or the boys actually, because they're still children at this stage. And I got into a debate with my co-host Elisa about the cultural conditioning, because he was saying, is it a genetic thing that women or young girls are naturally more emotional, so connect with the languages? And I said, no, I think it's a cultural conditioning. So, you know, going back again to cultural conditioning, how impactful have you found your work? Because again, like you said, it's difficult for you to start telling your father, you know, that XYZ actually, this is how gender relationships should be balanced. You're dealing with young boys. How do they take it to the context of their family when they get back home and say, actually, mom, dad, as a boy, a young man, you know, in the making, this is incorrect? How do those things reconcile?
I mean, it's a tough war. So to be very candid, first off, they have a mindset already. Every boy we engage all across Africa, they have a mindset. And one of the biggest problem about masculinity, I'm going to tie it back to this cultural inclination, is there's a bad modeling for men across Africa. So what they see, some of them see their father shout down at their mom. You know, some of them see their father, when there's a disagreement in the house, the father would rather walk away than express himself. But you see the mom scream and say, no, we won't do this, we won't do that. You know, so I mean, because there's this gender, you know, box up kind of, girls are able to express themselves. They're able to say what they feel. So I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if girls do more in English, in words and all of that. But you know, it's difficult for guys to express themselves. So there's a campaign we run called Boys to Campaign, the sexual abuse of boys. When we take them through sexual education, we realize that 95% of the boys we've engaged, over 2,500 of them, 95% of them haven't been engaged by their parent about sexual education. So they will say, Uncle, I don't want to talk about it. Say, why? Say, because I don't like to talk about it. You understand? So, I mean, it's a bit of genetic and cultural, you know, so there's a modeling already. Girls see their parents express themselves, you know what I mean? Even to take it to the religious part of it, you rarely see fathers come out to say they are very serious-minded religious people, except for a few of them. But you see, women and girls, they see their mothers always out there praying, always out there leading the front in conversations, you know, so it's difficult. It's quite a difficult one, so it's a bit of genetic and the cultural part of it.
And, you know, there's a lot of sort of, shall I say, undertones to the fact that we need to understand that boys are vulnerable as well. How much resistance have you faced in your work with actually convincing people that young boys are just as vulnerable as young girls? Because we tend to feel that, you know, the female gender is the more vulnerable one, which may stand true in some instances, but like you said, we're not hearing about the young boys' vulnerability.
So, I mean, we run a project, as I said earlier, called Boys 2. So one of the issues I've had is people saying I'm an anti-feminist, that I'm trying to bring up a movement.
See, I didn't want to use those words, but you know, you saw where I was going, right? You see where I'm going.
So I need to quickly clarify, I am a feminist. I'm for women, I'm for girls. But the truth is, a child is a child, a boy is a child, and abuse is abuse irrespective of the gender. I mean, we have in our database countless stories of boys who have been abused by their nannies, by their older cousins. I mean, boys tell us stories. And the most difficult part of it is when we meet older guys who share the story, they don't want to come out to talk about it because they feel no one will believe them. So, I mean, it's a big task. So people come out to say, you know, we're cooking up stories. People come out to say that when a boy is abused, he enjoys it. You know, so I mean, it's kind of a big circle we're trying to get out of. And the truth is, these things are real and they are cancerous. You know, we've had people say that their pastor, a child, about 15-year-old, said his pastor sodomized him during night vigils. For years, we've had a guy tell us that his nanny, for years, we've had someone say, you know, his godmother. You know, and so these boys have their different stories. I mean, when I say horrible, I've had the boy share a story with me and I cried. Because, you know, I felt the gravity of the pain. This guy said he can never forget. At some point, he said he's no longer attracted to young girls of his age. That whenever he sees an older woman, is always aroused. And he said he can only connect that to the experience he had, you know, with his godmother when he was about 12 years. So I mean, people don't believe the story. That is why we go around saying, see, the abuse of the boy child is real, just like the girl child. Boys too are vulnerable. These guys don't know anything, you know. And to even shock you, a lot of those boys don't even have an idea of sexual education. So they won't ask questions. So you ask the boys, when you started growing hair under your armpits, who did you tell? Nobody. But when a girl start having some genetic whatever, you know, she would ask questions. In fact, before asking questions, they would tell her, see, when you're growing this is it. When you're growing that, this is that. But who tells boys this stuff? Nobody. You know what I mean? So this is the circle we are in. We're trying to just tell the world to say, see, boys who have their challenges. I mean, a lot of challenges. You know, I was reading something yesterday about out of school children, and I realized that out of the 13.2 million out of school in Nigeria, about 7.9 are in the north, and they are girls. And the data sets we use for these are tilted towards boys. The truth is, one of the things causing girls getting out of school is violence in the north. And this violence are perpetrated by men. So if we can get it straight to say that both girls and boys should be paid the right attention, let us get them to school. Let the government have the political will to initiate and implement some of those things they are saying they want to do for boys and girls alike. I mean, the future is not female. The future is male and female. And if we look at it from a generic point of view, I'm sure we're going to get the right results.
How do we go about balancing this conversation? Because you know, as you rightfully alluded to earlier, you already have to clarify. You have to say, I'm not anti-feminist. Because the moment you hear somebody speaking about the rights of the boy child or, you know, the challenges of the boy child, it's often taken as an attack on those who are trying to forward the rights of the girl child. What needs to be done for these narratives to be balanced so that it can just be the rights of children and protecting children? What really needs to happen? Okay,
so from an organization perspective, I tell people I'm not a men advocate. I'm a boy child advocate. I mean, whatever problem we have with men, I wouldn't know the organization's trying to face that. But my our attention is placed on the boys. First of all, we need to make people understand that boys are children too. They are not men. These guys are vulnerable. They know nothing, absolutely nothing. So we need to see them from a generic perspective. So from our organization, one of the projects we do is called Men Start Action. So we get young boys to raise money to buy pads for girls, hygiene pads for girls. So we tell them, see, you're going to sit down and girls are going to take you through what they go through every month. I mean, we're trying to raise empathy in them. We're trying to make them see that, see, there are a lot of stuff girls go through. So I believe after the last project we did, a guy said, see, nothing can make me rape a girl. Understanding what this girl has gone through. So I mean, so when we begin to see girls and boys as children, first off, and not two different entities, when we begin to see them as our children and not the gender disparity, I feel we're going to make a lot of progress around that.
So do you feel that gender issues have no place when we're talking about children as a demographic? I
mean, it does. Absolutely. We have an issue with the girl child education. We have an issue with women in the workplace. We have an issue. I mean, it is only a stupid man that would walk into the fire. These are our realities in Africa. This is what we intend to do. So one of the things we do in boys' quarters is to take the minds of those boys and tell them that, see, leadership is not about gender. You mustn't feel you must become the president of Nigeria because you're a guy. When you see a woman who wants to lead, a woman can be more brilliant than you are. A woman can be more articulate than you are. You must accept it. I mean, we're trying to get to a point where we can tell African boys that, see, if your wife earns more than you, it is not a curse. You don't need to go to church to pray. It is the reality on ground. I mean, so we need to detoxify the minds of these boys. The realities are on ground. See, the truth is, when you hear some of the things these boys say to us about girls, you'll be surprised. You'll be surprised when you tell them, what's your perception about girls? They will say, well, they will become our wives. So when you tell them, what can women become? They will say, wife of the president, wife of the governor, wife of the senate president, wife of the pastor, wife of an imam. I mean, we've not gotten to a point where a boy can realize that a girl can become a president. So I mean, these are realities that are passed down, and subconsciously, you know, these are things our parents passed down to us in this part of the world. I mean, and these are some of the things we're trying to do as an organization to detoxify the minds of those boys. Now,
this organization that was founded in 2018 by yourself has already spread to 4 African countries. Which African countries? And that's incredible, by the way. I also want to know how you've spread so quickly and the response, the reception.
Okay, I mean, so first of all, I'd like to say that a lot of the support we get for Boy Scouters Africa, they come from women and girls.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Our leaders of operations, our head of operations is a woman. Our head of finance, the chairman of the board is a woman. I mean, so what we have done is to leverage on our social capital. So when I started off, you know, I do a bit of writing and a bit of public speaking. So I didn't start because I wanted to start an organization. I started because I had the burden in my heart about the boy child. And I feel there's a lot to be done. You know, I shared a story about how I feel my dad is a pastor, and I feel my mom would have been a better leader in the church. In fact, the church would have grown better.
That's spicy.
Yeah, the church would have grown better if my mom was given the chance. So there are times when my dad is out of town, and I wouldn't know if it is humility or whatever. They wouldn't make this woman or allow this woman do it when we know she could. So I felt, I shared my story growing up with 4 brothers too. I have 4 other brothers, I'm the 5th. And so I started telling people about what I intend to achieve. And surprisingly, I got a lot of support from girls, from women, basically to say that, see, I like what you're doing, let's start it over and all of that. So I started with a small volunteers meeting, you know, and I engaged people, I shared my vision. And surprisingly, I was able to gain traction because we leveraged on social media. So we're writing stuff about boys, writing stuff about their challenges. Then we started off the Boys 2 campaign, you know, about the sexual abuse on boys. I mean, it's an entirely new narrative we're trying to push. So I try to tell them that, see, I'm not only for sexual abuse on boys, I'm for the total health of the boy child, emotionally, psychologically, and all of that. Then we did an event at the Special Correctional Center for Boys in December 2018 at Oregun Ikeja, and the
feedback, the response,
feedback was massive. I had a lot of volunteers. From there, then we kicked off a real organization. I mean, we kicked off officially in January 2019.
Wow, 2019.
Yeah, registered with CAC, got the board in place and all of that. Then had a body, an executive body. I mean, so we started posting our stuff and we started getting feedback, you know, from Togo, from Zimbabwe, from Cape Town in South Africa, from Accra in Ghana. You know, we have someone from Zambia. You know, so we have volunteers. So what we do is to run it through a volunteer-based system. So, I mean, a lot of the things we do practically is about going to the boys to talk to them. So we train them, we train the trainers, then they go back to train their people in their different localities. I mean, we reached out about 15 locations across Africa, and close to 3,000 boys. So, I mean, I've not been to more than 4 states, but I have guys all over Africa,
Incredible.
you know, traveling around on their money. You know, with their money, with you know, their energy, their money.
Invested in this.
So you know, so this is one of the things that fuels my passion, because I know people can see what I'm seeing. A lot of the problems in Africa, if we can get this right, I mean, from the consumer spirit to patriarchy, a lot of those things can be corrected if we do a bottom-top thing. So when we go to the boys to tell them that, see, we're not just talking about sexual abuse. You can abuse a girl. So we tell them about girls. I mean, a lot of our facilitators are ladies. So they show them, they tell them, this is what we go through. We're emotional. When we like you, we show it and all of that. So we're able to make these boys see.
But doesn't that reinforce the stereotypes that we're trying to unbundle, especially when you're looking at, you know, trying to push the cause of women, for example, and young girls, which I'm an advocate of that. And part of that is to remove these stereotypes where we say that, well, as women, we're emotional, we're such. And also, and spinning it and saying that as young men, you're allowed to be emotional as well, you're allowed to be such. So where's the balance in this narrative? Because I'm concerned about sort of reinforcing what we've come to know as toxic masculinity and becoming custodians of patriarchy by, you know, raising young boys by reinforcing stereotypes of what women are perceived to be and boxing women, and now raising boys in relation to a box that we've put women in. You know, where do we strike the balance? Because I mean, I'm a woman and I don't. The next woman may not be as emotional as I am, and so forth, you know? So where do we draw the line with reinforcing stereotypes and raising young boys and men who buy into these stereotypes and now live by them?
Okay, so we have a finishing school where we teach boys about their makeup as a spirit, soul, and body. I mean, you're first a human before you became a girl or a boy. So everyone is emotional. We just try to mask it up. So we try to push this narrative to say that, see, you shouldn't assume only girls are emotional. Boys are emotional too.
But I mean, are girls emotional? You know,
we're all emotional.
We're taking this conversation to a whole different place. I understand what you're saying. I'm not going to play devil's advocate. Solomon, where do we find Boys Quarters Africa? You know, what are your social media pages? Where can we engage with you? There's people who are watching who feel like they want to be part of this. They want their sons to be part of this movement. How do we connect with you?
Okay, I mean, you can check out our website, www.boysqafrica.com. On Instagram, Boys Q Africa, on Twitter, Boys Quarters Africa, Boys Q Africa, and I mean, one of my biggest desires that one day I would speak at the United Nations to let them know that there's a problem with the girl child, there's a problem with the boy child. We need to balance it. We need to pay them the same attention. They are children first before they became a man and a woman. You know, so I mean, we're doing a lot. This December we'll be at the Special Correctional Center for Boys at Ibadan. You know, for exchange projects, we run a project for unreached boys who are behind bars. So we take them through trainings, we take them through a year-long training, and at the end of the year, we have a full-fledged party for them. Face painting, we take comedians there, musicians, to make them feel love. So the idea around exchange to say that exchange your pain for purpose. See, don't leave this house more aggressive than you were. You know, you probably raped somebody, and you know, fix your life. So we tell them, drop whatever you have here and move out with something else. And we're also running our Boys to campaign too, all through the year, about the sexual abuse of boys. You know, we go to schools, secondary schools, basically, because of this is where we can reach boys of different backgrounds and, you know, religious inclination. And apart from that, we're having a national conference next year, you know.
Ooh, I've heard about the men's conference that happens on Valentine's Day.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, I didn't tell you today's International Men's Day.
You said what?
Today's International Men's Day.
It's today International Men's Day. Okay, wonderful. Good to have a day. No, because when we have Women's Day, men always say, well, where's our day? There you have it.
Today,
so that's today. So in celebration of that, on that note, you know, we need to round up now. But thank you so much. This has been incredibly informative. And I think there's a lot for us to take away and a lot for us to reflect about on this topic. So thank you so much, Solomon.
Thank you very much.
All right, awesome stuff. Well, I'm pretty sure that you walked away with a little bit more insight into the balance of raising our nation, because at the end of the day, our nation is both feminine and it is masculine. We have all. So it is important for us to focus on the education of the boy child.